Thank you again for the wonderful presentation, Dr. Chen, and thank you to everyone who had questions. Our next speaker will be Dr. Guofang Li, a professor from the Department of Language and Literacy Education, Faculty of Education at the University of British Columbia, and a Tier 1 Canada Research Chair in Transnational and Global Perspectives on Language and Literacy Education of Children and Youth. As a leader in the research of second language and literacy education, Dr. Lee has focused on supporting the success of immigrant children in the Canadian educational systems. Today, Dr. Lee will be sharing about her study of the home biliteracy environment and bilingual vocabulary development. So, Dr. Lee, the stage is yours.
Thank you. Well, thank you for having me, and thank you for coming on a bright, beautiful Friday. So I'm very happy to be here. I happen to be attending the Canadian Society for the Study of Education, which is in Toronto. So that's why I can come in person. So thank you, Ebony. Thank you for having me and time for making the arrangements. So actually, my study is great to follow Dr. Chen's presentation because the question just asked, what about other factors, right, affecting children's reading? And my presentation will address one aspect of it. I want to acknowledge that the work that I presented today was conducted on the traditional, ancestral, and ceded territory of the Musqueam people, where I live, work, and play. So in Canada, when you probably have heard the Statistics Canada's recent census. So you can see that 25% Canadians, about 9 million people, had a mother tongue other than English or French. However, only half of them actually predominantly speak of language other than English and French at home. And more than 9 out of 10 of Canadians say, well, we speak one of the 2 official languages at home, at least on a regular basis. That means that only 1 in 10 only speak a language other than the official languages. You see the numbers are decreasing, right? So, and it's not surprising that there's a wide report of mother tongue loss in multilingual Canada, which is very ironic. There's another report on losing one's mother tongue in multicultural Canada, why the diaspora communities in Canada are struggling to keep their first languages alive. So one of the reasons is that in schools, non-official languages are very limited. They're actually sanctioned. In many schools, they say we speak only English, we speak only French, and that's it. They focus on also mostly academic language. And as I noted that monolingual practices are the norm. And as a result, home languages are bracketed out and ignored or minimized. In fact, my daughter last night told me that in her math class right now, about only maybe 80% are Chinese. And the teacher actually said, no other language, not even translation allowed. There's only one little sanction or app that they can use if only when they're permitted. So no other languages when everything is math class, by the way. So it's not language class. So similarly, many children attend after-school programs. In one of my research, I also studied one after-school program. We found this English-only policy, mostly not that they're not really policy, official policy, but it's practice and adopted policy. And most children in after-school program already socialized into monolingual English, and you can see many of reading, even after-school reading programs are only monolingual books, and program activities were always conducted in a dominant language. In the meantime, after what was happening in school and after school in the home, is increasingly parents are faced the battle or the ongoing battle of devaluation of L1 from the outside environment. And there's also social stigma on bilingualism. is not on bilingual French, and you still have bilingual French and English still considered very posh and kids. But if you are bilingual English French with another language, then it's not good. And there's also insufficient resources for many parents, especially in no resource languages. And so, and it's also related to parental L2 proficiency and their ideology towards the two languages. So therefore, I think that we need to really look at home if we want to preserve bilingualism other than bilingual French and English. That home is the important space for maintaining bilingual or multilingualism. So in terms of home literacy environment, which I'm going to focus on today, it refers to the physical and the social context in the home that supports literacy activities. Research has shown there are many aspects of home literacy environment. Everything really at home is related to the literacy environment. Right? But in terms of research on the importance, mostly three aspects. One is the language input from or with adults and others, could be siblings, parents, and other adults in the home. And in terms of bilingual families, like bilingual exposure and use, very important. Another important aspect is literacy activities. What parents or others do or what children engage with at home around print. Well, one very important aspect in home literacy activities is shared reading with the parents, especially in early years. And the third aspect is resources. Of course, here for bilingual family, we talk about bilingual resources. In resources, very interestingly, over the years, print resources really significant for literacy development, especially books. And of course, in recent years, there's increasing digital resources, reading in digital format or other activities in digital format. So hopefully today, I will talk about the relationship between home literacy, biliteracy environment, and bilingual vocabulary, especially among Chinese Canadian children, which I studied. And I hope to, through my study that I'm sharing today, we'll understand characteristics of home biliteracy environment and what the patterns of bilingual vocabulary development. And finally, what are the factors that in the home biliteracy environment impact bilingual vocabulary development. So I'm going to share one study that and two analyses in this presentation. So this study is also a longitudinal study funded by SHIRK Insight Grant with my colleague, Dr. Lee Anderson. It was conducted between 2018, 2023. Our original intention is to look at how the factors that many factors that affect make a long story short, that our previous study found that in grade 12, those children who entered kindergarten or in school system had a better, especially among Cantonese speaking children who had a better Chinese English development, ended up actually scoring much lower in grade 12. And we didn't know how along the way, how did difference occurred. So we thought, well, let's propose a study to study it from kindergarten and see where did they pass switched in the school system. So and we started this study focused on both Cantonese and Mandarin speaking children. But for this analysis, we grouped them together. First, I will present a longitudinal analysis focused on bilingual language input and bilingual vocabulary. And then I'll present a cross-sectional analysis on biliteracy activities and resources on bilingual vocabulary. And so the first analysis, I will try to address this question. Does bilingual home language, bilingual language use matter? So in this one, we use Alberta Language Environment Questionnaire developed by Professor Paradis and her colleagues in Alberta to look at the bilingual language use, which include two aspects. One is the language use, the frequency or quantity of use, and the second aspect is quality of use, and what we call language richness. And in terms of bilingual vocabulary, we used the Peabody picture vocabulary test version 5, which is the most recent version in English receptive vocabulary. We use the PBVTR, which is in Chinese version for that. So we did a analysis. I won't go into details, but I will go into the measure. So just for those of you who are interested in looking for different kind of instruments. So this one, Alberta language questionnaire, has 9 items for language use. You can see some of the 9 items there, and some item examples there. Talk about what language do you speak with the target child, and what language do you does the target child speak with his or her mother. And there's also with other adults, with siblings. So it's really not just the child speaks or uses the language, but how the family together using language. So in terms of language, the richness or quality interaction around print at home, in each language, there are 4 items. I present one item here. So for example, reading books, use computer, watch TV or movies, storytelling, sing songs, and there are 4 items about shared reading, kind of, for example, and the interactions around books. So it's not just literature. So for those of you who are not familiar or want to know what PBVD looks like, it's just this kind of 4 items where the kid will point to the correct item. And you can do it online or you can do it in person. If you noted, my project started in 2018. And by the time we got around to recruit participants, the pandemic hits. So the majority of our assessments were done online. And so the participants for this longitudinal analysis, we focused on 1st to 3rd graders. We have 145 first graders and 137 second graders and 79 third graders. In terms of home language, as I said, that we mainly focus on those who speak Mandarin and Cantonese. We have a fairly good distribution of males, boys and girls, and our sample actually included low SES families and immigrants who recently came, and also who majority of them actually were born in Canada. So in terms of home biliteracy development, in terms of home language use, you can see that the majority from grade 1 to grade 3, in fact, Chinese use slightly increased, and the increase is significant, which is kind of remarkable. And versus English actually decreased, right? But the majority of the families are speaking Chinese at home. So it's a very Chinese dominant environment. However, in terms of home language richness, the story is a little different, as you can see. In grade 1, so in both grades, across 3 grades, you can see that parents engage in shared reading or the kind of quality interaction in English much more than Chinese. And sadly, but as they reach grade 3 or grade 2, they start to decline. Like they start engaging much less shared reading, and it's partially due to the independence. They're gaining independence in reading, and you can see that Chinese actually consistently, language richness around Chinese is consistently lower, and it's dropping much more rapidly in grade 3. Which you can see why this is happening, right? So you can see that in grade 1, the children actually started with much higher Chinese proficiency, but then in 2nd grade, the paths start to switch, and in grade 3, they actually increased significantly, or English vocabulary is significantly stronger in English than in Chinese, which is kind of sad. This is a little surprising to us. We thought there will be some differences, but from all the literature I was reading, I was anticipating grade 4 is the dividing line, because that's the Matthew effect. The better you get, the higher you get. But we're surprised to see that in second grade, the trend start to switch. So we did the hierarchical linear modeling, and here's the English part. So how does the home literacy environment affect English vocabulary? So you can see in terms of quality, in terms of English, that home language richness or quality in English actually is a strong positive effect on their English vocabulary. And English at home has actually surprisingly no significant effect on English receptive vocabulary. This is actually a little bit different from previous research on Spanish home literacy environment. So that means maybe different kind of cultural aspect or influence the results. Interestingly, gender was a significant positive effect. Girls scored higher in general than boys. And in terms of course, you can see that this confirmed the early analysis that positive growth over time in terms of English. And SES, socioeconomic status, is a factor. It's only moderate positive effect. I want to point out that in our sample, the low SES families are relatively smaller sample, so that might be a factor. But this is actually similar to other studies where SES is a very major factor in affecting growth. And very interestingly, Cantonese speakers, we remember our study about Cantonese speaking. So Cantonese speakers actually made slower growth than in general. And even though girls scored higher, but their growth slowed down, boys start to catch up in third grade. So in terms of Chinese, home language richness, also very strong positive effect, more than English. And home language use, very strong positive effect. Remember, English use, it was not significant, but home language use in Chinese was significant. And significant negative growth, which confirmed our earlier findings that it's a decline or plateau, or I would say not plateau, but definitely a decline. The home language of Cantonese also, interestingly, Cantonese has negative effect on growth, possibly due to less formal exposure. So one very important contextual factor is that in Vancouver now, because of demographic immigration changes, used to have a lot of larger Cantonese community, and now it's all Mandarin speaking community or immigration wave in recent years. What's happening in the community now that used to have more Cantonese speaking public spaces and Cantonese speaking heritage language schools, but now it's all switched to Mandarin. So one of our explanation of the factor is that Cantonese children not only have to learn Cantonese, and also they're learning Mandarin as a second, third language, which actually many families also start to switch to Mandarin in the home, affecting this input in the Cantonese. So that's our explanation. So just to summarize the first phase of the studies, the language richness is a consistent and a powerful predictor of vocabulary in both languages. And you can see gender and SES play a role in English vocabulary, but not in Chinese. This is very interesting. It's actually different from other studies just focused on low SES Cantonese speaking families. So home language use in L1 supports Chinese vocabulary growth, but not in English. So as I noted, the early grades actually turns out to be a critical time, not just wait until fourth grade where they become read to learn or learn to read kind of division. Um, so the fact of Cantonese speaking children actually are having a hard time make me realize we need to really pay attention to intercultural diversity or intercultural linguistic diversity, especially those who are not speaking a standard L1 in a home. So I will move on to analysis two. So I will focus on how do biliteracy activities resource matter, right? So the three aspects of it. So here, based on previous analysis, we conceptualize this home literacy environment. Really, one's active, one's passive. Active means like parents actively participating in the process. So Senechal and Lefebvre had this home literacy model, which include the formal literacy, means that parents actually teaching literacy related skills, and informal literacy is more just intention, is more meaning making, more interaction around print. So it's like shared reading, for example, is considered informal. If you directly teach phonics or other, like for example, characters and pinyin, for example, then that would be called a formal literacy. If you just read a book or sing a song, those kind of considered informal literacy. So in those the active part, then the passive part is more like materials. Do you have in books at home that children can access to? Of course, here we call digital resources also considered passive, although it might be debatable whether they're actually passive or not. But in general, if is some apps may promote interaction, but in general, for example, TV exposure, TV we consider like digital or technology aspect, but they're considered non-interactive, right? So in order to remember the other questionnaire that talk about reading, singing songs, and those, they're actually not category. They're very difficult to actually understand what each category means. So we adapted the items to make it much clearer to align with our conceptual framework. So we're talking about how many books does your child have at home. So we directly about numbers, and how often do you read, like the reading, the shared reading, and how long does your child use digital devices, access to digital resources? How long do you teach literacy to your child? So this is more, and I'm very happy to report that this paper has been just came out last month. So we did a similar kind of analysis, but this is using cross-sectional data. So in this sample, we actually include kindergarten and grade 1. The reason we chose these two grades is that because we feel like these two grades are really transitioning to it's a very formal schooling just starting. So the home influence still very strong in this stage. So in this analysis, we have 42 kindergartners, again, and 106 grade 1 students. We have boys, girls, and also no SES and no SES children. So again, no SES children is the number is much smaller, so the results have to be interpreted with caution. So you can see English home literacy environment in terms of kindergarten to grade 1. Actually, you can see that the difference is we have more books, more English books at home, and the parent actually engages more direct teaching. And from a statistic point of view, these changes are actually significant in grade 1 and grade 2. So you can see that very interestingly, the parents actually engage quite a strong shared reading at home with their children. And then the Chinese home literacy environment is relatively stable, but you can see that in grade 1, there are much less books. And parents still engage a lot of direct teaching, but in terms of overall from statistical point of view, even though it's stable, so the changes are not significant. So in terms of bilingual vocabulary development, you can see that English vocabulary had significant growth, but then Chinese vocabulary had declined in grade grade from kindergarten to grade 1. And I shouldn't say from kindergarten because they're cross-sectional. So their grade 1 students has lower in Chinese proficiency, which is consistent with the other longitudinal analysis. So we did a path analysis of these factors that affect home biliteracy and home biliterate environment and bilingual vocabulary. In terms of grade 1, kindergarten, sorry, you can see that both English home literacy environments has like English digital device use, parents direct teaching English, and overall English home literacy environment is really significant for English vocabulary, receptive vocabulary. And overall number of books are important for Chinese receptive vocabulary. Almost every single aspect of home literacy environment in kindergarten, in terms of Chinese in kindergarten, except the digital device usage, is significant for Chinese receptive vocabulary. So indicating that parents' role is really significant in grade 1 for both languages. But in terms of grade 1, then significantly changed. In grade 1, only the number of books in English is significant to English receptive vocabulary. But in terms of Chinese, except the parent-child shared reading in Chinese, which this is maybe related to a cultural practice I'll explain later, that number of books, Chinese digital device usage, and direct teaching in Chinese and overall environment is really significant for Chinese receptive vocabulary. But I want to draw your attention is that Chinese digital device access actually negatively affect English receptive vocabulary, which is kind of interesting. So we're thinking that because maybe it's the Chinese digital access time is taking time away from the English exposure, so could be affecting the English vocabulary. So you can see that in grade 1, parents still play an active role in their home home literacy environment, and also in the Chinese receptive vocabulary. So just a summary of this cross-sectional analysis, that home literacy environment have different effects on different languages across 2 grades. So home language and L2 ability is stronger in kindergarten, and home language literacy environment in L1 actually consistent correlation across in their L1 development in kindergarten and grade 1. So you can see from this that bilingual children's L1 skills are much more associated with their language exposure and literacy or literary resources at home than in English, because they get a lot of English exposure and instruction at school. So the dimensions really have different effects, associations on bilingual vocabulary development. You can see that the number of books at home and the use of digital devices, both are independently effective or negative in one case in children's bilingual development. Parent-engaged home literacy activities, shared reading and direct teaching are more effective in Chinese than in English. So this early grades. So in terms of conclusion, you can see that in both analysis, active home literacy environment and interaction, quality interaction is really significant, and it's actually in fact more important than quantity of use. So really engaged, more shared practice predict vocabulary gains more effectively than just exposure. So books matters for both languages, and digital resources only matter in kindergarten, only for English, but maybe as they move on to the later grade, they have detrimental effects. I actually have two papers on this aspect already. Is confirmed the negative effects. So another finding is the different asymmetry effects across languages. So L1 development is more home independent than L2. And so this is actually sometimes different from other language pairs. So it's important to explain maybe further why exactly why these different aspects are different for different language pairs. Another language exposure pattern matter only for L1, as I mentioned. And another aspect is moderating social demographic factors. For example, the immigration history did not seem to matter, but SES, L1, and gender are important factors to consider. So implications. So as you can see that if we need to promote high quality literacy activities at home, really parents need to devote more time, resource to L1. Really a strong L1 is really important. Teachers, a lot of teachers early, especially in the early years, always ask parents who are speaking another language, say, go read more in English, which actually may not be the best advice. So maybe ask them to say, read in your home language may be more important and more effective. So again, as mentioned, we need to develop more non-Mandarin or non-standard language L1 speakers, such as Cantonese speaking families. I'm sure maybe other language groups maybe have similar findings that if you have like other, like Spanish, for example, you have many versions of Spanish, right? Or different varieties of Spanish. Maybe I think some studies already say that that non-standard Spanish also matters for this for L1 learning. And heritage language schools need to make explicit efforts to address some of the language varieties, especially in the low resource communities. So in terms of research, I think we need to look at gender differences, how parents socialize their children in different gendered literacy practice at home, what are their beliefs. And we actually explore in grade 1 how parents actually engage in very gendered literacy practices, like what kind of genres of books for girls and genres of books for boys. And they also engage different kind of independence, like let boys explore whatever they want, but the girls they have more advice on what to read, and different impact of SES on mainstream minority language skills. And then one thing actually we didn't explore is child agency in home literacy environment. We relied explicitly on parents' report, and of course we assess the children, very early children, so it's very hard to, and during the pandemic, so very hard to conduct interviews or home observations. So I think in moving forward, we need to look at more child agency in what kind of activities they engage in. And then their digital engagement patterns. And remember, our instrument only look at how long did you engage, or how often, how frequent do you engage, but exactly what kind of content, what kind of ways that children engage in those digital content in different languages. We need actually more nuanced data to understand their engagement patterns. So in terms of the theoretical model, we actually, based on our study, we thought maybe we need to regroup some of in future studies, for example, print material, digital device use, or digital materials. Then we need to really look at adult dependent literacy activities, especially when children are actually increasing, especially in grade 3, for example, or even grade 2, they start to become more independent readers. What kind of books they choose to read on their own is actually matter. That's also related to child agency as well. So I'll stop there. Thank you very much for listening.